The other scripture is, I think, Chronicles, Second Chronicles. Everybody have what they need? Everybody good? Okay, page 2, page 2. Page 1, page 2. All right, so we're going to do a few minutes of review. We're talking about chapters 38 and 39 in the book of Isaiah. And we know Isaiah is a list of prophetic utterances that Isaiah is giving over the people of Judah and Hezekiah and the king there and sometimes Israel. And we know that the predominant thought process is because of the people of Judah and Israel have not listened to the word of the Lord, they're going to get basically carried away, right? So in the middle of all these prophetic words, we have these two chapters, 38 and 39, and it's about the king Hezekiah. And most of you guys know the initial part of the story, and that's where King Hezekiah is having to deal with Assyria coming, trying to kill everybody, take over the land, and God says, no, they're not going to do it. And then he gets sick. Now, we know that in his early life, because he actually became king quite young, he went around and chopped down the Asherah poles, broke down the altars to Baal. He tried to go back and do the good things that David had did. Matter of fact, they said he was the best king since David, right? But all the stress, all the pressure, everything else, and then all of a sudden Hezekiah gets sick, right? So we know he's sick, and he's on his bed, and he's dying, and Isaiah comes in and tells him that, get your stuff in order, you're going to die. So he curls over, looks in the corner, and prays to God. So Isaiah's walked out of the building, he's out of the palace, into the courtyard, into the second courtyard, and all of a sudden God says, go back and tell him this. So as Isaiah goes back in the house, goes back upstairs, and says, God said he's heard your prayers, and he's going to give you 15 more years, right? And as a sign of his word, he's going to do what? Do you guys remember? The sun's going to come back 10 degrees or 10 steps, right? And that's going to be the sign that you're going to live those 15 years. So then the sun came back, actually reeled back time, so that as it came through the window, it would go up the steps, like light up the steps. Well, it actually came down 10 steps. So that's the scenario, all right? He's going to get 15 more years alive. God stopped the sun and reversed the effects on it. I don't know if he spun the world backwards, or I can't tell you how he did it, because I don't know how he does it, right? But anyway, he had this great, amazing miracle. So this is where we pick up the story. Everything that has happened, God's grace and mercy to him, and now we pick up chapter 39. And it says, shortly after Hezekiah was healed of his illness, the king of Babylon, Merodach-Baladan, son of Baladan, heard that the king Hezekiah had been deathly ill and recovered. So he sent envoys carrying letters and a lavish gift. So we're going to stop for a few seconds, because you got to understand what's happening here. Who's the one that's been attacking Jerusalem and Judah? The Assyrians. All right? This is before Babylon is a powerful kingdom. Babylon has already been conquered by Assyria, and it's basically a vassal state. That means they control it, right? But Babylon was a little bit on the rebellious side. They didn't like being controlled by the Assyrians. They were always stirring up trouble. So when they heard of the miracle that Hezekiah experienced in his healing, They sent envoys. You know what an envoy is? Like an ambassador. Like they're coming down to inquire, hey, what's going on down here, right? We heard you were dying, and now all of a sudden you're not dying. And we heard that the sun moved at this guy's prophetic word. And so he sent these people down to check stuff out. Now, I want to scroll back a little bit to the name. That Merodach Baladan or Baladon or whatever it is, son of Baladane, you know, it's actually in the Hebrew, there's a little bit of a difference in spelling. Okay, we don't see it because it's not written in Hebrew, it's written in English, right? But the son, Merodach Baladan, actually, that word actually means Marduk has given me a son. Do you guys know who Marduk is? He's a god, right? So Baladan, that name means Baal is Lord. All right? So here's their two kings, and the two kings are actually named after two demonic gods. Okay? So you got to understand who the players are. So they heard what happened to Hezekiah, and they're coming down to see Hezekiah, right? So it says he sent envoys carrying letters and a lavish gift. We're going to get to that in just a second. But you got to know why he's coming. So we're going to jump to that second piece of paper you got. And it talks all about what happens. In 2 Chronicles 32, verse 24, it says, in those days Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death and prayed to the Lord, and he answered him and gave him a sign. And we know what that sign was, right? But Hezekiah did not make return according to the benefit done to him, for his heart was proud. Therefore wrath came upon him and Judah and Jerusalem. But Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride in his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord did not come upon them in the days of Hezekiah. Now, this sounds a little confusing, doesn't it? It says Hezekiah got sick. He cried out. God healed him. And then it says, did not make return. What does that mean? Let me help you out. In the New Testament, there's a similar story. Jesus heals 10 lepers. How many of them returned? 1. So the other 9 did not make return according to the benefit done to them. They did not give thanks to God for what God had done in their life. So here's Hezekiah, who asked God to extend his life. God does, but he isn't thankful. Why do you think he's not thankful? Okay, but pride is what we see. But what do you think was in his heart? I need you to put yourself into this story a little bit. I want you to think about, why do you think he wasn't thankful for 15 more years? What was going on? Somebody was trying to kill him, destroy everybody, right? Remember we talked all about this, about how stressful it was to be a ruler, and then how much more stressful it is to be a ruler when somebody's trying to wipe you off the face of the earth, right? And killing all your people. You remember that the Assyrians have already captured a lot of the cities, already destroyed Samaria, killed people, hauled them off. He's living, it's like one giant ulcer, right? So, okay, I'm going to give you 15 more years of this ulcer, right? So part of it is, yeah, I don't want to die, but part of it is, yeah, I don't want to live in that mess either, right? Also, remember, all the things that Hezekiah did, why did he do them? Why do you think anybody does them? Okay? He wanted God to see him, right? So in his mind, on his deathbed, he's probably thinking, God, I did this, and God, I did that, and I can't believe you're letting all this happen into me. And God says, okay, I'll give you 15 more years. I deserved it anyway. I mean, I know none of us in here has ever done that, right? At least not in the last 2 minutes. But this is a situation that we have to understand what pride looks like in our life. Here's a guy who spent his whole life as king trying to do what is right. And in that process, another country has come and killed cousins, relatives, friends, destroyed the country that he's the king of. He's so worked up over it all. He's probably got an ulcer or a boil or whatever it is that's going on. He's in stress. So when God heals him, because he really didn't want to die, he wanted to see God's hand move. But what happened was he was physically healed, but he wasn't delivered from the Assyrians. Even though God promised him what? 15 more years, and that while he lived, the Assyrians wouldn't what? Take Jerusalem. Right? So here he is. Okay, I'm better now. I've got 15 years. I deserved it anyway. His heart becomes proud. And so these pagan people who have all these pagan gods that he's not supposed to do anything with, they sent an envoy with letters. It's like, okay, look, dude, you just had this supernatural thing go on here in your own body, in your own land where the sun turned back, all this crazy stuff. Hey, why don't we just hook up together? Because isn't that why you send an envoy? Isn't that why Blinken just went to China? Hey, can we fix this relationship here? Right? We all don't want to die. Let's fix this relationship. And that's what these guys were there for. They were there to say, Hezekiah, man, I don't know what you got going on, but this Marmaduke guy and this Baal guy, we got his gods. They ain't turning the sun back. They ain't healing people about to die, right? I want to know who you're hanging out with. How did this happen? Who you praying to? You know, what kind of rice bowl do I have to put in front of the altar tonight? Because that's what they're used to doing. See, they're used to having to please their gods in order to get them to have any type of blessing. They have to earn their blessings. God gave it freely to Hezekiah. But see, they don't understand that because they don't live in that paradigm. They don't live in that context. So they sent this group of people to ask questions like, well, were you really sick? How sick were you? Oh my gosh, I can't believe you were dying. And now look at you, you're running around. And then the sun moved back, and they're probably, hey, can we interview some people here? Oh yeah, the sun went up these stairs, and then all of a sudden stopped, and then all of a sudden came back down the stairs, and then later that day it went back up the stairs. Yeah. Yeah, he was a new docu-series, right? William Shatner was the one narrating. But so they're there. They're trying to figure out what it is. How do we get this guy to partner? Because remember what I told you about Babylon. It was still a little country, right? And it was under Assyrian oppression, just like Jerusalem was under oppression. They didn't like it either. And the same envoys that came and saw Hezekiah, they also went to Egypt, who was under Assyria. What were they trying to do? They're trying to get a group together to push back the Assyrians, right? So they're trying to say, look, if I bring you a gift and we hang out for a little while, will you join us and push back the Assyrians? Because the God you got is obviously a little bigger than the God we got, right? So this is why they're there. So let's go back to your 2 Chronicles, right? And verse 27 says, and Hezekiah had very great riches and honor, and he made for himself treasures for silver, for gold, treasuries for silver, for gold, for precious stones, for spices, for shields, and all kinds of costly vessels, storehouses also for the yield of grain, wine, oil, stalls for all kinds of cattle and sheepfolds. He likewise provided cities for himself and flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him very great possessions. This same Hezekiah closed the upper outlet of the waters of the Gihon and directed them down to the west side of the city of David. And Hezekiah prospered in all his works. Verse 31 says, so in the matter of the envoys of the princes of Babylon, who had been sent to him to inquire about the sign that had been done in the land. Now you notice in the book of Isaiah, it doesn't say that envoys asked about the sign, right? So there's two places the lives of the kings are recorded in the Bible. Do you know what they are? Kings and Chronicles. You think, why is it the same story told twice? Well, one's told from a governmental point of view. One's told from a personal point of view. The kings are about the kings. The Chronicles is about their kingdom. So that's the difference, right? So it says, so in the matter of the envoys, the one in Chronicles is telling you why the envoys really came. To inquire about the sign that had been done in the land, comma. God left him to himself in order to test him and to know all that was in his heart. You know, this is the exact same question we can ask, why did God put two trees in the garden? Right? Because if God doesn't give you an option B, then you don't have a choice, do you? See, we always wonder, why is that there to tempt me? Because you can't have victory unless you have a battle, right? You can't earn a reward unless you pass the test. So God has to provide those opportunities or allow those opportunities in our life. Not that he's trying to force them on you. He's saying, what? Choose me. Choose my tree, not the other tree. And sometimes it looks really hard to choose his tree, doesn't it? Especially since half the time we don't know what his tree is. Because we're so accustomed to eating the wrong fruit that we always eat the wrong fruit. So here is this Hezekiah guy. God has done all this stuff. I mean, you just heard all the things. What did I just tell you? Here's a king who's been under oppression for years. How does a king under oppression have to build cities just to keep his critters? All right? Most of us have a dog house to keep their dog in. All right? Hallie's going to build a barn to keep some horses in. I don't know anybody. I have no idea of any person on the planet that has to have a whole city full of people to take care of their sheep. Now, is this unique to Hezekiah? No. All you got to do is go scroll back a few hundred years. Even scroll back a little further than that, Abraham. Abraham, they estimate, had 300 or more servants just to take care of his flocks. That's a lot of shepherds, right? That's a lot of cowboys. Imagine one man and his family come over the mountain, all right? These people walk and carry their stuff on the backs of donkeys and camels. They live in tents. And there's so many of them, they come up to a walled city, and the king inside has to send somebody out and says, look, dude, I don't know who you are, but please don't kill us. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Throw sheep at you? But that's how impressive Abraham was. When he showed up, it wasn't like, okay, the minivan pulls up and open the door and here comes 12 little soccer kids, right? It's like a caravan that they see coming for days, this cloud of dust coming through the wilderness for days, and you see all these hundreds of people and thousands of animals thinking, I have no idea what's coming this way, but whatever it is, we got to make friends with it fast. Right? And that's impressive. Until you get to Isaac, who was 3 and 4 times richer than his father Abraham. What does that look like? I mean, really think about what that must have looked like. Here's Isaac coming down, and he's walking through the land, so much so the kings of the cities that he's passing are in terror. They're afraid they're going to get wiped out just because one guy's family is walking through the woods, right? So here's Hezekiah, a continued example of how God blesses the people, right? He's under oppression, but the dude has to build cities just to have enough places for his shepherds to live. And then he has to build another city for his cows. And then he has to build entire buildings to keep salt and pepper. Right? Spices were obviously a commodity that was traded. But I don't know anybody. I mean, how many shields does it take to actually build a house for them? Right? I mean, you think about a shield that's probably 2 or 3 inches thick, right? Maybe 2 or 3 inches in diameter. And I know how many, I mean, we got 26 of these round tables, and they're like this thick, and it makes a stack this tall, right? One stack this tall. And I figure you probably put 3 or 4 shields in one stack that tall, and then to have to actually build a barn just to put your shields in, that's a lot of shields, right? This is a lot going on here. The man has a lot of stuff. It's no wonder everybody wants to kill him, right? So he has all this stuff. He's been prospered in every way. God has just given him 15 more years to live. God just told him that Assyria in his lifetime won't overrun the city. You think out of anybody in the world, this guy would be the most thankful person on the planet. Because if I had all that stuff, I'd be thankful, right? Well, if I brought one of my African brothers and set him next to you, he would look at you like you just looked at Hezekiah. You go, boy, you're not very thankful for God. If I had all the stuff you got, I'd be thankful. I live in a mud hut. I have a goat. At least until tomorrow, because that's dinner. So you see, when we look at this and think, wow, how could this guy be proud? How could he not be thankful? It's just a matter of perspective, right? So anyway, let's jump back into Isaiah. So they brought him a gift. Now, it was customary to bring people's gifts, right? I mean, when the Queen of Sheba came to visit Solomon, did Solomon need anything that she brought? No. Matter of fact, he actually sent her back with more than she brought. But it was customary to bring a gift. Why bring a gift? It's to show honor, right? It's respect. It's to honor. Say, look, I'm coming to your place. I'm bringing you this gift to show you honor for who you are, right? Honor is something that has been lost in America in the last 150 years. It just really... Not just honoring your parents, but honor in general, right? So here they are. They're here. They're asking questions, but do they have ulterior motives? They're not just curious. They're trying to get him on their side, right? So delighted by the king's gesture and having a desire to impress them, Hezekiah welcomes the envoy from Babylon and opens the doors of the king's storehouses of treasures and showed them to the envoys. He let them see all of his gold, silver, spices, costly fragrance, oils, as well as his entire armory, all of the king's royal treasures, all that was in the king's palace, and all the wealth of his whole kingdom was shown to them. He let a little flattery goes straight to his head, didn't he? Oh, you're so special, Hezekiah. God loves you so much. We love to see what you've got. Can you show us around? Oh, yeah, let me show you everything I have. Right? Because in all the accounts here, never once does he give what? He never gives thanks to God. It's that these are all mine, 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 mine. I'm pretty sure his middle name was Seagull. So if you know the cartoon, then you know the reference, right? Mine, mine, mine. So he takes these guys, counselors, they call them princes, but they're actually counselors or administrators, and they're basically walking from city to city, storehouse to storehouse, as he unlocks the door and opens it up and shows them all the gold he has, and all the silver he has, and all the salt and pepper he has, and all the fancy perfumes, and the oils, and the cedar wood, and the armory with shields, a whole house full of shields, a whole barn full of swords, all his chariots, all his men, and Humpty Dumpty right in the middle of it, right? He shows them everything about his city. I mean, it's not like the United States ain't never done that before, like 40 times in the last 10 years, right? Oh, yeah, we're doing this, and we're doing that, and we're doing this. Oh, by the way, we're going to fly over this new technology to this. Just send your balloon over to pick it up. I mean, I don't know. We have a tendency to do that, right? Pride causes us to want to reveal all of our strengths. And it actually reveals our weaknesses, doesn't it? Because he did it because they flattered him. And if you read the book of Proverbs, what's it talk about flattery? Does anybody know? Yeah. Fools love flattery, right? So apparently he didn't read a book of Proverbs, which is basically, for those of you who don't know, if you want to know how to be a king, read the book of Proverbs, because that's exactly what it's there for. The book of Proverbs was assembled to teach Solomon how to be king. So apparently Hezekiah didn't read. He skipped that class, right? So he shows all these people everything that is in Israel. So what do you think they did when they got home? Man, you ain't believe the stuff this guy has got. I mean, he got a whole city just for the sheep herders because he has so many sheep. He's got more cows than and salt and pepper and all these spices. He's got room. He got a whole barn full of nothing but metal shields. But the problem with Babylon at that time is what? They're still under oppression. They're still a small nation. But do you think they ever forgot what they were told? No, 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 no. So when Babylon became a powerful nation, do you think they remembered all the stuff that Israel and Judah and Jerusalem had in it? Because who never overran Jerusalem? The Assyrians. The Assyrians never took any of it. So the whole time the Babylonians are going, man, if we ever get into power, we're going there. It's like robbing the piggy bank because this guy's an idiot, right? He's done showed us everything he has. We know where all his weapons are. We know where all his money's at. Now, I don't know if he was married or not because it didn't show any of his wives off, right? So maybe he wasn't married. Maybe that was his whole problem. Anyway, so Isaiah the prophet hears what happens. And he goes running to the palace, runs in the palace, and he says, "What have you done?" And Hezekiah says, "Oh, these guys from a distant land called Babylon came to see me." Like, Isaiah's not stupid. He knows where Babylon is. He knows what happened. But Hezekiah is trying to play it off like, oh, they're so far away, it'll never, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. They came, they were nice guys. I let them in the house. And I said, here, I don't know who you are, but I'm going to show you everything where I keep all my money. I keep all my silver. And, I'm going to go out for a while. I'll see you when I get back. And hopefully I'll have a house left. But, yeah. So Isaiah then asks, what did they see in your palace? It says, be specific. Tell me what you showed them. Hezekiah responds, they seen it all. I showed it all to them. I showed them everything I got. I showed them how cool I was, how important I am, how smelly good I got. I got 400 kinds of perfume. I got more cows and more sheep than I got it all. I told them and showed them everything I had. And I would love to be able to see an instant replay of what, I can only imagine Isaiah's face. I can hear his teeth gritting, and his face turning red, and all the veins in his neck and his forehead start going thump, 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 like you got to be, what kind of stupid are you? All right? And this guy goes, no problems. I got 15 years, you can't kill me anyway. God promised, right? He says, I showed them everything in my royal treasuries. Again, we use that two-letter word, my. Right? Mine, mine, mine. So Isaiah says to Hezekiah, here is what Yahweh, commander of angel armies, has to say to you. Now, we all know that phrase, commander of angel armies or commanders of the host of heavens, is a phrase that Isaiah uses when what's going to happen? There's a judgment coming, right? You're going to get it because you did this. Some of your, what do you say? Wait, I don't want to go too much. The days are coming when all of your treasures in your palace and all the wealth that your ancestors have stored up until this day will be carried off to Babylon. Absolutely nothing will be left, says the Lord. Some of your own sons who come after you will be deported, castrated, and become eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then Hezekiah said to Isaiah, the word Yahweh has spoken through you is good and right. And this next sentence tells you why he said it that way. For he thought, at least for me, there will be peace and security in my lifetime. That is exactly right. It shows exactly where it was all about his heart. So remember how I painted the picture of the anxiety of him coming in. This is what made him sick. This is what caused him to almost die. This is the thing that he was actually begrudging God about, was the fact that here he is king, he's done all this stuff, and these people are trying to kill him, and God didn't kill them. He gave him 15 more years of life, and he's mad because what he really wants is just to be able to enjoy all his stuff. God, I really don't want to do what you're asking me to do. I just want to play with my toys. I want to enjoy a comfortable life. I want to sit back and eat my delicious food and drink my drink and watch Netflix all night long. Right? That could be one of our problems. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Kim's going, yes. All right. You ever get on them little shows you just got to keep watching, That's why I like movies. 2 hours and they're over. You get hooked on one of them little mini-series, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're pushing next episode, right? I get it. I understand it. All right. I live it. I might need deliverance. So, Hope Healing Monday nights, right? Anyway, so I want to back up a little bit to this prophetic word. We already know that Jesus or God has already promised Hezekiah that during Hezekiah's life, what would not happen? The Assyrians would not come and take over. So he knows that for the next 15 years that he's going to rule, he's going to reign, and he's going to get to keep all his stuff. So we know that in the end, by his comment in the end, that it's, at least for me, there'll be peace and prosperity. All right? So let's go back a minute and look at the judgment. It said the days are coming when all your treasures, all the wealth of your forefathers, all the wealth of Solomon that had been stored up in Jerusalem. Now, just to give you an idea how wealthy it was during the reign of Solomon, they used blocks of pure silver to hold their door open. Right? I don't know anybody today that uses a 5-pound block of pure silver to hold their door open. That's how rich the average person was in the days of Solomon. That's not Solomon. That's how rich the average person was in the days of Solomon. I'm pretty sure if you went home right now and propped a 5-pound block of pure silver in your front door to hold it open, it probably would only be open for about a day. Because somebody in the neighborhood would say, ooh, look at that idiot. I'm going to relieve them of all their interests. Right? But the people were so wealthy, they actually just left silver laying around. And that's hard for us to understand, right? What kind of abundance you would have to have when you wouldn't even pay attention to the second most valuable metal of the day. Right? So, all of his treasures, all the treasures that have been accumulated since David, Solomon, all those thousands of pounds of gold and silver that are in the treasuries, he's saying all that stuff's going to be gone. All your fancy food, all your fancy spices, all your cows, all your sheep, everything is all going to go. They're going to come and they're going to take it away. The Babylonians, the ones that you think are so far away, the ones you think that aren't big enough to do anything to you, the ones who are struggling themselves just to stay alive, one day down the road, they're going to come here and take everything you own. Now, when we read that, we see the word, the days, right? What kind of time frame gets popped into your brain? Like next month? Maybe next year? Right? Because when we say, if somebody says, oh, in a couple of days, or there's the day's coming when this is going to happen, you're like, okay, on the calendar, maybe Monday, maybe next Friday, right? Because in our mind, that's what we're thinking. Do you know how long it was between the time Isaiah said this and the time Babylon did this? 120 years. It was 120 years. So Hezekiah dies 15 years later, right? So then his kids have kids, and his kids have kids, and his kids have kids. And maybe even one more kid's having kids. Right? Do you think they remembered this 3, 4, 5 generations later? Do you think that the people actually identified when Babylon showed up to destroy their city that was directly related to great-great-grandpa Hezekiah? That when all these families that have prospered for 120 years get slaughtered and sold into slavery and drug out of their homes into a foreign country, do you think, that's stinking Hezekiah? Look what he did to us. Yeah, but you got to remember, the reason they got hauled off is because they didn't do what? They didn't read a word. And if they did read it, they didn't believe it, right? Sure. Yeah. I mean, there was all kind of prophets. But again, they're prophesying the same thing. But we ourselves don't always connect what's going on today with what happened 100 years ago. Right? Let me give you a very real example. Okay? What was 2 days ago? Somebody know? Okay. So what was Juneteenth for? Okay. That was the last remaining group of slaves that were freed from the Emancipation Proclamation. All right. When was Juneteenth made an official certified holiday? I think it was 2 years ago. Right. So what year was Juneteenth actually happened? I guarantee it was over 120 years ago. Right? So something that happened 120 years ago is still today affecting our society. Right? And not only affecting it as in a positive way, look, we're celebrating this thought process, but are we still dealing with the effects of something that happened in the 1600s? So you see, things that happened 10, 20, 100, 200, 300 years ago, almost 400 years ago. 400 years. We can't even understand it. This country hasn't even been around that long. And we're living with the after effects every day in our society because of stupid choices that our leaders made. And not just our leaders, but leaders from other countries, right? So we've got to start taking inventory of what's going on in our life so that we can see the root and get it taken care of. Do you know where that happens? Hope Healing Monday night, 6 o'clock, right? And it's we don't always understand it. We talk about, ancestral curses, bloodline curses. Right now, America still is operating over an ancestral curse called slavery. And it's on both sides of that fence. Because it's not just a white people problem. It's a problem of humanity. Because as long as we keep thinking that we're more than one group of people, we're always going to be broken. As long as we keep thinking something contrary to the word of the Lord, we're always going to be broken. Pride is what got America in a position we're in right now. Because some group of people thought they were better than another group of people. Pride is what got the Israelites in trouble because a king, Hezekiah, thought he was better than another group of people. So let's go back and look at these after effects. It was 120 years, right? So, yeah, because there was this guy or this angel named Satan thought he was better than God. So it says, all your wealth is going to go. Nothing will be left. Nothing of value will be left here in Jerusalem. Nothing of value will be left in Israel or Judah at all. It'll be gone, every bit of it. Some of your own sons. Now, we already know it's going to be at least 120 years, right? So it's probably not his sons, probably his grandsons or great-grandsons. And it says, they will be deported, castrated, and become eunuchs of Babylon. Do you know their names? Yeah. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You can put names to this prophecy that happened 120 years before it did. Right? And do you realize that those people who got hauled off to Babylon, there was another prophetic word that they would be there how long? All right? But did they all remember that? Who remembered it? Okay. Daniel remembered it. So not even all of the Jews that got hauled away remembered their own prophecy. And if somebody says, we're going to haul you into captivity, but I'm going to let you out in 70 years, I'd be trying to remember that. At least I would think I would try to remember that. But then again, there's a lot of promises that are in the Scripture that if we did this, we'll get that we don't seem to remember very well, right? because we don't do any of those things.
So, question.
Yes.
When was the first time that the exile to Babylon was prophesied?
Probably a little bit before that, but this is the biggest, most direct reference to what Babylon actually did. Because before they were going to be beaten up by other nations because of their insolence towards God, right? But this is a very specific, measurable event. This is probably one of the most accurate prophecies that you can trace back to actually people's names, other than the messianic ones.
Because if I remember correctly, in Chronicles, it talks about King Solomon dedicating the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And whether he realized or not, to me when I read it, it seemed like he was prophesying. It says, and your people turn away from you, and they become exiled to a distant foreign land.
Well, that was the remember, that goes all the way back to Moses. Moses said, I brought you out of a foreign land to make you a treasure for myself. As long as you obey my statutes and live by my rules, no country will take you away.
Right, but there was a specific line. It says, but if they remember you and they turn their face and pray towards this temple. And to me, to make that connection, though, when Daniel, when he prayed, he always prayed
Pray to the east, that is correct. Yep.
towards the temple.
Yep. And that's why even today, Jewish people, devout Jewish people, when they pray, they face Jerusalem. Wherever they're at in the world, they face Jerusalem. So it's understanding these things that we often miss, right? So we've got these guys, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we all know that they were good looking, they were intelligent, they were hauled off to Babylon, they were made eunuchs. Now, and if you don't know what a eunuch is, go ask your mother. All right? And they were actually in the palace of the king, and Daniel is even recorded as serving not just one king, but 4. Right? So all of this is such a specific prophecy that we can see, but it all ties back to Hezekiah's heart, where he wasn't thankful. And to enter into God's presence, what's the first thing we have to be? Because it says, how do we enter his courts? With praise and thanksgiving. Right? So if we look through this historical blurb in the middle of all these prophecies, why did God have Isaiah put this historical dialogue in the middle of all these prophetic words? It's simple, so that we would remember what we're supposed to do. Because you can learn as much from watching what you shouldn't do as from knowing what you should do, right? At least most of us can. Some of us, not so much, right? So Isaiah, God has put this historical narrative in the middle of these prophetic words so that you can see what really happens when you're not turned towards God. He's showing you, no matter how rich, powerful, blessed you are, that if your heart isn't full of thanksgiving and praise to God, it will end in destruction for you and your family and your family's family, right? It will be a cycle of destruction. So we know the song, right? How many generations is God good for? Okay. How many generations does the judgment of God land? Huh? Like 3 to 4, right? So we know the song. We sing the song. Do you realize Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego lived the song? They were that 3rd and 4th generation. All right? But what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? They were delivered. Why? Because they didn't just worship God, they honored God. They were thankful. Even in time of oppression, even in time when their life was threatened, what did Daniel do? He went back to his room as he was accustomed to do, threw open the window, faced Jerusalem, and prayed towards God, giving him thanks. So we think that we sing that song or hear it read that, God judges to the third and fourth generation, but he blesses to 1,000 generations. To me, that's two blessings. That means God won't let your family more than 2 or 3 or 4 generations go before something good happens to them. Because just as he can bless you for 1,000 generations, he could do what? Curse you for 1,000 generations, because we actually live under a curse, don't we? Every man, woman, and child born onto this planet is immediately born under a curse. And God said, I won't let it stay that way. I won't let it stay that way. I won't let it stay that way. So no matter what your situation looks like, how hard it may look, how difficult it may be, how impossible it may feel, God said, if you keep your eyes focused on me, you will be blessed. But if you don't, the consequences are clear. Amen? So this to me is an invitation. It's an invitation to do what? Give thanks with all my heart. Right? And really make sure I check myself before I wreck myself, right? I'm sure your mama said that to you once or twice. And your head was going, yes, 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 right? At least that's what mine was doing. All right? So I want to encourage you that even in the midst of all this craziness going on, all these things that Isaiah is saying, God is continually inviting you into a place of blessing and not cursing, in a place of prosperity and not desperation. All we have to do is remember that he is God. Amen? And thank you all very much. You'll have a great night. Be safe going home. We'll see you soon. Sunday at 9 o'clock for Sears, 10:30 for service. Have a good night. Is there any questions? I didn't ask about questions. Any questions?